Most excellent. Welcome to our next mastermind in Put Your Dream to the Test by John Maxwell. And so glad that all of you could join us today. We always like to kick off anything that we do with an attitude of gratitude. So let's get the ball rolling here. Who would like to share with us something they're thankful for today?
I've got a big one. I shared it with Bert, you heard it the other day, but my my mom will be 87 next week, and the doctor took her off her chemo this week. He said her cancer's in remission, and so she's doing extremely well. So that's I just want to praise the Lord for that.
That's awesome. That's great.
Very
Good
cool.
news.
Very cool.
I'm grateful. One of my staff was symptomatic and had to be quarantined for a while and got a negative test result the other day. So we're all celebrating that.
That's awesome. That's great.
I'm going to go back to I'm grateful for doing this, for you and Tom, for our health that we got here, that we're both able to still continue working within the home. And the kids are all healthy, even though they're working at Beaumont. They're still good.
Excellent. I know this morning I had I normally don't do this, but I had a bowl of Fruity Pebbles cereal because I have kids in the house. And I got to tell you guys, that was pretty amazing. I forgot how good a bowl of Fruity Pebbles could actually be. So I really enjoyed that today. And I'm just thankful for cereal and fresh milk. And I guess you can take it a step further, our dairy farmers, for the work that they're still doing out there, man. It's a lot of work goes into getting that bowl of cereal to our table. So I'm thankful for all the people that make that happen. So that's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, they're on.
Who's next?
For me, I'm thankful for the sunshine that's shining in through my window right now, and the sun that might say that it's going to be a nice warm day today because we've had some pretty crazy weather here. Down into the 20s or teens last night, and maybe up into the 50s today. Who knows? So I'm very thankful for the sun.
Awesome. Anybody else want to share what they're thankful for today?
I'm thankful just because I woke up again this morning.
That's awesome. Good stuff, Christine. Thanks for sharing. Okay. Well, Jessica, were you going to say something? You look like you're about to say something. No? Okay, that's fine. Okay, well, I'm just going to ask you guys, remember, if you could please do me a favor, if you have any televisions or radio in the background, if you could just turn those off for us. Obviously, we're going to keep people on mute unless they want to talk. But we're going to get started today looking at Chapter 4, The Passion Question of John Maxwell's book, Put Your Dream to the Test. Before we do that, though, I just want to mention that Tom and I did an amazing interview this past week with a gentleman named Nate Rockwell. Nate is a entrepreneur. He owns Briquette Smokehouse restaurant in Ashtabula, Ohio. And I remember walking into Nate's very first restaurant 10 years ago. He opened 11 years ago, but 10 years ago, he opened up this restaurant. He took over an old restaurant and he walked in there with a budget of $17,000 and converted an old barbecue restaurant that was failing into a emerging successful barbecue restaurant that smoked their meats. And basically they had 18 seats, 18 seat capacity when they first started. And ends up being that over the course of the next 10 years, he's grown this from a business that was worth about $160,000 its first year to a business worth $1.6 million in 11 years. And we had a great opportunity to talk to him about how he created and crafted that dream, and then how he moved that dream and had to keep growing with it. And now what he's going to be doing moving forward when it comes to overcoming, obviously, the coronavirus. But I just want to show everybody, that we now have a YouTube channel, which is great. And you can see, if you go to YouTube, you look up Real Leadership Company. We ask you guys to go there, subscribe to this. We're going to be putting our videos up there right now, like we talked about, putting those up there for free through the month of June. And then we're going to start having our Unstuck University section, which will be there. But you can see this is what the video looks like, the real life stories from Real Leadership Company. If I
Hey,
click
Bert,
on it, yeah.
could you send the link, post the link here in the chat so
sure.
people can click on that?
Absolutely. So I'll do that as well. But the video looks like this, but it's a really good interview. Lasts about 38 minutes. And we just encourage you guys to check that out. So I will post that there for all of you guys to check out as well. Does everybody have a copy of the Mastermind handout, the booklet? Do we need to post that, Tom? Can we put that up there for everybody?
I think we can. I'm currently looking for it.
Okay. It seems like Zoom continues to change their stuff on a weekly basis.
There it comes.
Awesome. And then I will also post the link for the YouTube channel as well. Okay, so there is the Mastermind Participants Guide. If you need it, you can download that. And then also, if you want to check out the YouTube video later on, there is the link for that as well. So again, we just encourage you guys to subscribe. So having said that, let's dive in to this week's chapter 4, the passion question. I believe it's on page 24 of your Participants Guide. And we're going to start off by talking about, does my dream compel me to follow it? Does my dream compel me to follow it? And this is the passion question. Steve Jobs once said, if you're working on something exciting that you really care about, you don't have to be pushed. The vision will pull you, right? And there's a big difference between being pulled towards something and needing someone to push you towards something. And so we're going to talk about that today. What are the implications of that statement for you guys? What's the difference between being pulled and needing to be pushed toward your dream? And just remember, you're all on mute, so you have to unmute yourself if you want to talk.
If your vision is hot enough, your burning desire is hot enough, nobody's going to pull you. If somebody's pulling you, it's going against your will. You're not going to have any desire to do it, and you're not going to put any effort into it. Your dream is big enough, it's pushing you, you're going to go out full board to accomplish that.
Okay. Good. Anybody else?
I heard someone once say entrepreneurs work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40.
It's good, Carrie.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true. Let me throw a reversal out there for just a minute, because obviously at Real Leadership Company, we talked about coaching as well, right? So obviously you can have a vision that's so compelling that it pulls you towards it. But as we've talked about in the past, sometimes we develop those dominant ways of thinking, or we fall into the death spiral of negativity, of being surrounded by other people who tell us that our dream is no good, that it's not going to work. And all of a sudden we put up those mental blocks that prevent us from being pulled. So is it ever possible that maybe we do need to be pushed a little bit to get back on track to the vision or dream that we were hoping for?
I have this quote that I came across this morning. It says, don't settle for what's permissible. That's the path of least resistance. Go after greatness by going the extra mile. And I think that that's what's working with us here in our passion question is, are we passionate to go the extra mile for this dream that we have?
Right. Yeah. Sometimes, guys, this is why coaches exist, right? Sometimes we do need coaching because we set out on this journey and this trajectory that we want to accomplish something or do something amazing. And the vision's pulling us. We're compelled by it. But all of a sudden, finances get tight, or plans change, or, hey, we're having a baby, or whatever the case is. Something comes up that changes that trajectory, and it distracts us, right? And sometimes, just like you're driving those vehicles now that have those auto, the lane alerts, when you kind of start, merging out of your lane, it alerts you to get you back focused on what's in front of you. Sometimes you need that coach to say, hey, alert, alert, stay focused on what you're trying to do. So don't feel like just because you had a dream once in your life and it was pulling you and it was compelling you, don't feel like, it just ends because you're not still on that same track. Sometimes you just need a coach or a friend or someone to push you a little bit to get you back on that path and moving in the right direction. Passion's important, guys, because we know it creates possibility, which is the second point in your guide today. The quote there is, passion is a critical element for anyone who wants to achieve a dream. Why? Because it's the starting point of all achievement. Passion is the starting point of all achievement. So thinking back on the dreams that we've been cultivating and talking about for the last 3 sessions together, how would you rate your level of passion for your dream today? If you were to come up with a scale 1 to 10, 1 being you would rather have a root canal done without any anesthesia, or 10, you are so fired up and driven and compelled to achieve your dream that you consume it, you think about it all the time, you're moving towards it. Where are you on that scale? Does anybody want to share?
And remember, your mics are muted, so unmute them to respond.
Jessica said she'd be a 6. Anybody else?
What did Jessica say? I missed it.
She said she'd be a 6
Okay.
on that scale.
On the stuff that I'm working on right now,
Mm-hmm.
I would say like an 8. Because
Okay.
a 10 is just, you're not going to go any higher. I think I can go a little bit higher.
Okay. Good. That's good. Anybody else?
I would say about a 6.
A 6. Okay, great. Thanks, Gary. Okay. Well, here's what we know. Passion pulls us up, right? Passion pulls us up. That's number 1. It pulls us up and it enables us to overcome adversity. It enables us to overcome adversity. Now, we're going to be referring quite a bit back today to the interview that we did with Nate Rockwell, because a lot of the things he talked about in his interview really apply to today. And so passion, Nate's originally from Erie, Pennsylvania. He moved to Ohio. He worked in the restaurant industry his entire life, working for a lot of corporate restaurants, right? So he was a general manager or manager or cook for a lot of corporate restaurants, Chili's, TGI Fridays, all those big names. And he found that he loved working in restaurants and he loved working with people, but he didn't like the corporate feel of it. So he wanted to own his own restaurant. And so when he finally had this opportunity, when there was a fund that was made available through some investors, private investors, whatever, to take this struggling restaurant and to convert it, they said, come back to us with a business plan and how much money you need, and we'll make this happen. So Nate came up with this awesome business plan. He was fired up. He was excited. He came back to the investor and said, here you go. I can do this for $50,000. That was his startup plan, $50,000, which really is not a lot of money for a startup at all, but 50 grand. And they looked at the business plan. They thought, oh, this all looks really good. Now we need you to come back and do it for 25,000. Right? So they told him to make the business plan. They told him to come up with a budget. So we did all of that. He had the passion. It was pulling him forward. He goes into the meeting. He presents his plan. They say 25,000. They've cut it in half. And Nate walked out of there feeling kind of insulted and feeling kind of defeated. Like, how on earth am I supposed to do this amazing business and start it with $25,000? Right? He said, there's no way I can do that. So what do? His passion pulled him back up. After he wallowed in self-pity for a little bit, he started working on the business plan again. He developed a new business plan, and he came back to them with a better business plan, and he was able to start the business for $25,000. And they looked at that business plan and thought, oh, this is great, man. You really have a vision here. We're excited about this. But money's gotten a little tight. We need you to come back and we need you to figure out a way to do this for $15,000. And Nate thought to himself, you've got to be kidding me. How can anybody start a restaurant with $15,000? Especially a a barbecue smokehouse where there's special equipment and high priced meats and everything else. And so he went back, and again, he wallowed in self-pity for a little bit and felt bad for himself, but the vision kept pulling him. It kept pulling him up out of that despair. And he came up with a bare bones business plan to get a business started for $17,000, at which he had to bring $2,000 of his own money to the table. And 11 years later, the business is worth $1.6 million.
Wow.
So how does having passion for a cause or a career or a position, how does that enable you to overcome adversity?
It makes you think outside the box. When adversity hits, there's got to be other ways to do something to get something done.
This is Denise. I think you look at the challenges that the obstacles that you come across as challenges, and you just don't let it stop you.
That's good. Carrie,
Right.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, David.
Oh, I was going to say there's that old expression where there's a will, there's a way,
Mm-hmm.
which basically ties into what the two of them just said.
That's good. Carrie typed that it's sweat equity, right? Absolutely. You got to put the effort into it. Jessica said that, the passion is fuel. Passion is definitely fuel, right? If your fuel tank is empty, you're not going anywhere. If there's no passion, you're not going to get it done. So passion is what enables us to overcome adversity. I have another story, but I'll wait. I'll share it later. So let me ask you this: for each and every one of you guys, what is going to carry you through the tough times? And let me tell you, right now, in terms of a business standpoint, we are in probably the toughest time that we as a generation, this generation, will probably see. I'm not saying this is going to be the Great Depression, because it looks like we are going to be able to rebound from this relatively quickly when it's done. This isn't going to be years and years of trying to make it through. And this certainly is not going to be quite as similar to 2008, because we don't have a lot of people losing their houses right now because of what's happening and what funding is coming in. But this is definitely going to be a trying time. So what is helping you to carry through this tough time, or the tough times you're going to see chasing your dream here in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years?
This is Denise. I've already set some things in motion prior to this, so I'm kind of focused on those things and keeping contact with people that I've already had things going with. So I know this is going to end, and I've got some really good things set up for the future that are probably going to happen.
Awesome. That's great. I love the mindset you have there too, Denise. You're talking about the future with positive terms, which is awesome. So you're already projecting that positivity for the future, which is great. Anybody else? Who else wants to share?
I'm looking to go back to school. So right now my preferences are limited.
Okay. So you're looking to go back to school. Now, Christine, let me ask you this. What is stopping you from going back to school right now?
Because I have to go in on hands-on.
You have to go in on what? I'm sorry?
Hands-on.
Hands-on. Okay. And what type of schooling are you going back to again?
I'm actually going to go back to beauty school.
Okay, great. Excellent. Okay. That's good. Well, that's awesome. So your dream that you talked about in week 1, where you were thinking about it, now it sounds like you're putting motion to your dream.
Actually, I'm going to go back. I used to have a nail license. Now I want to go into hair.
That's awesome to me. That's awesome. Great stuff. Great stuff, Christine. Okay. Anybody else want to share? How are you going to get through the tough times?
Well, going through the business so fast and just working all the time, I kind of like the business aspect, the business of the business. So now I'm able to go in and fix everything, or make it, what's the word for it? I'm just gonna stay with fix everything and make it work properly and efficiently. Come up with some new ideas, so when this is over, I've got a new market to go after.
That's great, Keith. That's awesome. In John Maxwell's book, he talks about a poet named William Arthur Ward. And I'm going to read the poem to you. This is the poem he writes about, because this leads into the next couple of questions. Ready? The poem says this: believe while others are doubting, plan while others are playing, study while others are sleeping, decide while others are delaying, prepare while others are daydreaming, begin while others are procrastinating, work while others are wishing, save while others are wasting, listen while others are talking, smile while others are frowning, commend when others are criticizing, persist while others are quitting. So the next question that we have to talk about today is, what do you need to be studying while others are sleeping?
Nobody else? I do a lot of the Simon Sinek books now, and then I go and watch. I do a lot of YouTube on like Simon Sinek and Maxwell, and any of the other good guys who are out there. That helps. That seems to help a lot.
Good. Anybody else? What do you need to be studying while others are sleeping?
I just have a comment because I've listened to a lot about how you think, how it matters what you think. And so I think you need to study yourself, and I think you need to look into your own, how are you speaking to yourself? Because that is where the positivity comes from. And if you can catch yourself talking negatively, I think you can change your whole trajectory.
That's awesome, Denise. You can write these words down on your paper. Ready? If you want to grow yourself, you have to know yourself, right? That's a real big John Maxwell idiom that's used all the time, right? You can't grow yourself unless you know who you really are, the root of who you are, right? The old saying, I am because I think I am. Well, that's where that starts. That's having that right mindset that Denise just kind of alluded to and talked about. So that's awesome. That's awesome. Good stuff. So the other two questions, what is it that you need to prepare while others talk about it? Because man, there's a lot of talk, and talk is cheap. What is it that you need to prepare while others talk about it? And then what is it that you need to persist in where others quit? I love the silence. It means you're all thinking.
I think my previous answer covers both of those questions, just to keep working on the business, come up with new ideas on how to hit markets when I can get back out there.
Have you ever been to a networking event? Anybody? You show up and there's 80 other people in the room, and you're all, well, before this, we're all shaking hands. Now we're going to be elbow bumping or whatever. And everyone's talking about, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this and I want to do this. We're working on this project, and you hear all these amazing things. And then you get back together like 3 months later for the same networking event. And one of two things happens. Either like half the people that were at the last event don't show up because they've already quit, or they're still talking about the thing they were going to start doing 3 months ago, and it still hasn't come to fruition. Talk is cheap, right? We all want to sound really good when we're talking to other people. When we're surrounded by other people, we want to talk up our company, talk up our ministry. We want to talk up our jobs, our positions, who we are in life. But while other people are talking about it, maybe we need to do a better job of actually preparing for what it is we want to do. Now, you need to talk life to your dream, without a doubt. We've spoken about that. You need to talk to your dream to make sure that you understand you have a vision for it. But if all you ever do is talk about your dream and there is no prep work, the dream's never going to come true. It's just going to be a dream, right? You need to have the beautiful picture of the dream, but unless you start preparing for it, it's not going to work. And what about the persistence versus quitting? Now, we've been talking the last 2 weeks specifically about the restaurant industry. Does anybody remember some of the statistics we talked about last week of what's happening to the restaurant industry right now in Michigan and across the country? What percentage of restaurants have already failed in the US? Does anybody remember?
No.
So last week we talked about this. The National Restaurant Association says that 11% of restaurants across the nation have already failed and will not reopen after the pandemic is done. 11%, more than 1 in 10. So knowing that 10% of restaurant owners, some of it's no fault of their own, but some of it is poor planning, have quit. They have abandoned their buildings. They have left restaurants that are now fully equipped with tables and chairs and cooking equipment, and everything you need to run a restaurant is now sitting in these unrented spaces. I'm telling you right now, you're going to see a huge emergence of new restaurants after this pandemic is done, because they're going to be able to walk in to the footprint of other people's failures and come out victorious. Think about that. How often do we look to walk into the footprints of other people's failures to carry on the mantle that they weren't able to carry anymore? So keep that in mind. There are businesses, sadly, there are ministries, there are people who are not going to be able to make it after this. And the fields are going to be ripe for the picking after this, guys, to step into businesses that weren't able to adapt, that weren't able to change, and to capture that market share, to capture those new customers. There are going to be millions of potential employees available who will be looking for new work. I'm telling you, there's a silver lining to this whole pandemic thing from a business standpoint that you don't hear about in the news media cycle. You don't hear about it from the doomers and the gloomers. You can walk in the failure, the footprints of someone's failure, and come out victorious on the other side if you just continue to persist. Tom, you want to go with the next one?
Sure thing. This is number 2. Passion pushes us out, giving us initiative. There in your paper. Passion pushes us out and giving us initiative. Between your dreams and inspiration and its manifestation, what kind of efforts will you have to make for it to work? What kind of efforts will you have to make for it to work? Your dream. Anyone? All right, well, there's this quote here that says, to succeed in life, we must stay within our strength zone, but continually move out of our comfort zone.
Absolutely.
That's a good one right there. And that goes back with that quote I came up with this morning. Don't settle for what's permissible. That's the path of least resistance. Go after greatness by going the extra mile. Any comments on that?
Well, you absolutely cannot stay in your comfort zone. You'll just sit there mediocre your whole life if that's where you stay. It's good to be there. I know people who do that. I've got family members who did that and died in their comfort zone and never seeking anything higher.
Yeah, we certainly can't stay in our comfort zone if we want to achieve our dreams.
I know in the book it says that complacency kills passion and it reduces us to average, right? I mean, nobody wants to be average as a business owner or as a minister. We know that that's what some people rise up to average. But we're all here because we don't desire to just be average. George Bernard Shaw, he's a playwright, and Maxwell quotes him in his book, but he says, I'm sick of all the reasonable people because they see all the reasons for doing nothing. I love that quote. You can't be reasonable and be successful. You can't be reasonable and start a business. It does not work that way.
All right, so let's go to number 3 here. Passion positions us well. Passion positions us well, giving us the greatest odds for success. Passion positions us well, giving us the greatest odds for success. So here's a question for us all. How does passion bring out the gifts, talents, and abilities in you? How does passion bring out the gifts, talents, and abilities in you?
I think sometimes we don't know the gifts and abilities that we have until we're challenged. And, the passion causes us to challenge ourselves, to try and, as we talked about before, get out of our comfort zone and to try new things. And then that's the one really great way to find out what strengths we do have and what abilities we have. And, and even things that we might have had some, small amount of ability before, by actually challenging this, we can enhance those abilities and those skills.
That's good. That's good. So, well, let me ask this. Does your passion bring out your gifts, talents, and abilities?
I think so. I think your passion is big enough. It gives you new ideas. They just come out because it's, you want to achieve something. How am I going to do it? And your subconscious will come up with stuff and give it to you.
Anybody else?
I know my grandfather, he worked for GE for 42 years. And I just remember growing up, he would always say to me, I can't wait to retire. I can't wait to retire. And my grandmother, who, she worked at a grocery store a couple of days during the week to bring in some extra money. And she would always say to me, oh, this weekend's going to be so great. And so my mindset that was formed at a young age was, you work a job to retire and you get through the week to get to the weekend. And I realized when I was in college, that's a really sorry way to live your life. Like, who wants to just work a job to retire one day, or who really just wants to get through the week to get for the weekend? Passion says, I can't wait to go to work on Monday. Or passion says, I can't wait to work on my dream this week to see what might come up. And my grandfather was never passionate about working at GE. It was a job. He had a pension. He retired. He got his money. But do you know how he spent his retirement? With early onsets of Parkinson's disease, and he couldn't do anything. So he worked his whole life for nothing. So even what he was excited for 42 years, he wasn't able to achieve it once he got to the age of 62 and retired. And my grandmother, I mean, she was an amazing cook. I learned how to do a lot of my cooking from my grandmother. And I used to love going over and watch her cook in the kitchen and do all those great things, which is why I probably still have such a huge interest in cooking and that type of thing. But she never cooked on the weekends. She did her best work during the week for her family. And on the weekends, it was kind of like, she just sat on the couch and did crossword puzzles. And I'm like, I'm looking at these two people that I admire and love. And I'm like, you guys are not living passionately on the weekends or in retirement, which is what you worked your whole lives for. So passion says, I don't know about you guys, but I love my work. I love my company. I love going to work. Sometimes my wife will look at me when I'm home now too much. And, luckily it's an essential business. I still get to go in a couple days a week when my general manager isn't there, but she'll look at me and she goes, you just need to go to work. And I'm like, I do. I need to go to work because I love work. I love what I'm doing. So that passion's important. Like Tom just said, man, it's important to be able to harness those gifts and those talents and abilities.
One thing that I want to throw out an example of that was my father, who did like your grandfather. He retired. He actually got an early package. He was with GM and retired after 28 years, and they gave him credit for having 30. And so he was 53 when he retired. But then he got into ministry and full-time ministry, and he's been pastoring. Even though now he's in his 80s, I don't see him ever retiring, just because he loves it. He loves working with people. He loves helping people. He loves that whole gamut of what's involved with ministry. And it's because he loves it. And like I said, I can't see him ever retiring.
Yeah. That's awesome.
I actually have retired but coming back out of retirement.
Mm.
So, and my retirement was because of health reasons, but I have all aims to fight with that as well. But I don't let it stop my dreams.
That's great, Christine.
Yes, that is great. John Maxwell, he said his father is 98 years old, and his father said at 98, he said, "My best days are ahead of me." Okay? My best is ahead of me at 98. Okay? So what's our excuse? Okay? There's a motto in the John Maxwell team, and that's this: jump and build your wings on the way down. Jump and build your wings on the way down. You should write that down, right? Jump and build your wings on the way down. And so this leads us to the next question here. Why is it detrimental to our potential when we stay in our comfort zone? Why is it detrimental to our potential when we stay in our comfort zone?
Sometimes it's just a safe zone.
Denise, did you have something to say?
Yes, I was gonna say that I think our comfort zone sometimes is our fear zone. It's our stuck zone. And so it's kind of like you congeal where you are and you kind of get stuck in the jelly. So I think you need to, whatever you can do to get unstuck, take the first step.
I love that. That's a great word picture. We congeal where we get stuck. Absolutely.
Yeah, don't get stuck in the jelly.
That's right. That's good, Denise. I like that.
Yeah, and of course that tags on to the story that Bert told last week, and even perhaps in the little commercial he did for this mastermind today about the family that was on their way to Florida and gets in, the car breaks down halfway, and they decide to just set up camp and live there. It's just, hello, it doesn't make any sense. I like Jessica. She said, when we build our wings on the way down, we have no choice but to figure it out. Right? Yep. And that's what it's about. And she says comfort zone can be our fear zone, and she loves that. So that's what it's about. It's stepping out of our comfort zone. I heard this podcast about change, and you know, change. We're not all that fearful of change because, you know, we change our clothes, we you know, may buy a car, we may do this or that, but what the problem is we're fearful of what change will bring, right? And when we step out of our comfort zone and try this dream out, we're afraid of what will happen on the other side. But how do you know unless you try? And I think I shared this before. My wife and I, you know, she'll say, well, you know, I don't like going out to trying out new restaurants because I don't know if I'll like it. I said, but you don't know if you won't like it. So we got to be willing to try. And yes, successes are made up of probably a bunch of failures getting to that success. You've heard that expression, if at first you don't succeed, try again. So we need to do that. Any other comments on that? Why is it so detrimental to our potential when we stay in our comfort zone? Anybody else?
Okay, I'll share another story. So I served in the United States Army. I did my basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. They call it Relax in Jackson. I guess it's because it's the fake military. I'm not really sure. And I'll never forget, you know, when I made the decision I was going to join the Army, I went down to the MEP station, which is where they process you. You in, you raise your right hand, you take the soldier's oath. You're going to defend the Constitution against enemies, both foreign and domestic, blah, blah, blah. You sign your name on a piece of paper, and they say, congratulations, you're now a soldier. And I remember after that moment was done thinking to myself, I'm not a soldier. Like I literally just signed a piece of paper said an oath. I don't feel like a soldier. I don't look like a soldier. And then what do? Then you get on a bus and they take you to basic training and they give you a uniform and they cut everybody's hair the exact same way. And so you learn how to walk and talk like a soldier and march and do cadence and everything else. You learn how to clean your weapon. This is my weapon, whatever. I won't go there. But anyways, they go through this whole process of what you're supposed to do and how you're supposed to be as a soldier. And even though I was doing all these things and I was doing push-ups till I couldn't push anymore, and I still didn't feel like a soldier. I was in the military. I signed the oath. I had the uniform. I had the haircut. I still didn't feel like a soldier. So one day we started doing something called the confidence course. And it's where all the soldiers go out together and there's all these different, stupid obstacles. Like you could literally die on some of these obstacles that they have you doing, but they push you so far that your mindset becomes shattered, right? You say, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this. And the Army is saying, well, you can do it and you have to do it. And there's no other choice. Now, I remember I came to this one exercise where there were these 4 walls. And the first wall was, 4 feet tall. The next wall was 6 feet tall, then an 8 foot tall, and then a 10-foot tall wall. And the drill sergeant started yelling at us 5 in our group saying, you're going to get over these walls, calling my mother names I didn't know existed and screaming at us. And you got 4 minutes to get over these walls. And we're looking at each other like there's no way on earth we can get over these walls. We had one female in our group. She was like 5'1". She was the shortest thing in the world. Like, how are we supposed to do this? Well, he blew the whistle and we're all just angry and frustrated and it was hot and there were gnats and we were just getting eaten alive. And so finally me and this other guy said, let's get started. So we grabbed the female soldier. We threw her over the first wall. She was not happy about that. Okay. And then we all kind of get over the first wall, but we're grumbling and complaining. We get to the second wall and I'm reaching down and I'm trying to give somebody a firm place to put their leg and their foot misses and hits me in the groin. And now I'm in pain. So we end up flipping him over the wall. He lands on his shoulder, injured his shoulder. It was rough. We were grumbling and complaining and it was horrible. The third wall, the exact same thing. We're yelling at each other. It was horrible, but something amazing happened at the 4th wall. We all got over that wall. And when my feet came down on the other side of a 10-foot wall, I looked up at that wall and I said to myself, I'm a soldier. See, mindset prevents us from doing so much. And when we stay in our comfort zone, we begin to develop these deep-rooted thoughts and beliefs about ourselves, about what we're capable of doing, about how the world works, because that's how other people tell us it works. And if we stay in that comfort zone, we can't become what we are desiring to be. We can't see our dream brought to fruition. And on the other side of that wall, I firmly believe that I am an American soldier. I believe that with all my heart. If I can get over a 10-foot wall with some battle buddies, I didn't think I could get over the 6-foot wall, let alone a 10-foot wall. My mindset changed that day. And when my mindset changed, all of a sudden I took my role and responsibility as a soldier more seriously. There was more pride when I was doing my marching and my cadence. I took my weapons training more seriously. I thought to myself, you know what? I feel like I could go to war and do what I need to do now, all because of that 4th wall. And I think that there's a lot of people out there who, when they're faced with this wall challenge in life, they get over the first wall because everybody gets over the first wall. And some of them get over the second wall because they can do it on their own power. But when you get to that 3rd and 4th wall, you look up at that wall and you think there's no way I can do this. And so what do? We sit down between the walls and that's where we're going to live. This is where we're going to dwell. And because we didn't push through to get over that 4th wall, our mindset never changes. And that's the problem with the comfort zone. When you are in the comfort zone, you don't grow. And if you're not growing, you're never going to see your dreams manifest themselves in your lives.
Very good.
Thank you. Thank you for that story, Bert. Yes. Question, why does passion position you for greater odds of success in attaining your dreams? Why does passion position you for greater odds of success in attaining your dreams?
This is Denise, and I think that passion releases, really frees your mind to think differently. When you're excited about something, I think you have a lot of neurons firing in places in your brain that they didn't fire before.
Yeah.
And I really think it frees you to think differently because you are jumping out of bed in the morning and that's all you can think about.
That's good.
Yeah.
Real quick question on that. And Dave, I think you had something to say, but listen, does your passion wake you up excited in the morning?
Yes, absolutely.
Anybody else?
Half the time it doesn't let you sleep. Like last night.
That's good. Anybody else? Does your passion get you excited in the morning or keep you awake at night?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Dave, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I just want to say one other thing. The reason passion provides for greater odds is because it goes back to that talked about persistence. Is if you really care about something, you're not as likely to quit. And so when you're not quitting, your odds, just, grow, in extremely great big odds, or big numbers. That's just, if you care about your family, you're not going to quit on your family. If you care about your education, you're not, it just goes on and on. So if you really don't care, if it's really not that important to you, it's a lot easier to give up.
And Tommy Lasorda, John Maxwell tells the Tommy Lasorda story in the book. And Tommy Lasorda was the skipper for the Los Angeles Dodgers, won World Series, just great teams he put together out there. And he was being interviewed by a reporter. And the reporter asked him after a really horrible loss, like a terrible loss. He said, "Well, what type of day was this today, Tommy?" And Tommy responded, "Well, let me tell you, the greatest day of my life is when I'm out here coaching and we win a game." And he says, "The second greatest day of my life is when I'm out here coaching and we lose a game." Because he loved baseball so much that obviously he cared about winning. But even in the losses, it's still the second greatest day of his life. And I think that's the difference between passion, right, and a job. When we have passion, man, even on your worst day, even on my worst day at my home care company, I can still come home and say, I took care of the sick and the elderly. I made a difference in someone's life today. That's passion, right? So I love that Tommy Lasorda story that Maxwell throws in there, because that's so true. When you find what you love, it makes such a huge difference.
That's really good. Which leads us to our next question. And by the way, everyone say hi, Jingle.
Hi, Jingle.
So why does safe living and staying in your comfort zone make people feel regret in the later years?
Because I think it brings them to say, what if, what if I had done this? What if I had tried one more thing? What if I had, it just brings all those questions, of what could have been.
Yep.
I'm sure I can speak for all of us at this moment and say that we all have some regrets, don't we? Some things that we didn't follow through with. But today matters, right? Today is the difference. We can be like, what's his name? Mark Zuckerberg, who started Facebook, and I don't think he ever finished college, right? And he's a billionaire now. Or we can be like Colonel Sanders, who starts a national chicken chain with his, I believe, with his retirement check.
He was 65.
Yeah. So, it doesn't matter where you start so much as it matters that you start.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
So we want to live life without regret. We want to take that chance and take that step. And listen, if I can hopefully ease all your pain and sorrow by saying you're going to fail, you're going to make mistakes. It's just the way life is. We are. However, we can learn from those mistakes. We can, as John says in one of his books, we can fall or fail forward. Right? We make a mistake, and that just becomes a step to make and have success. So, next question. What are some of the should haves that people repeat as they advance in years? What are some of the should haves? Like, I should have done this or should have done that, that people repeat as they advance in years?
I think a lot of them, I should have spent more time with my family. That seems to be it. From what I've seen in my experience of people dying.
Which makes it hard, to balance that, that priority of family and sometimes reaching other goals. Because sometimes those goals seem, or those things seem at odds with each other. Because sometimes it's easy to, some guys can spend all their time at work and lose their families, or you can do the opposite. And it's finding that balance, I think, is a challenge, or a big challenge.
Balance is the key, right, Dave?
This is Denise, and I was going to say that it's, I hear a lot of people say that they wish they would have appreciated each moment more. And being in the present is really important, because if you're in the past, you're depressed, and if you're in the future, you have anxiety. So you got to stay in the present and enjoy your family when you're with them, and prioritize and be in the present, I think.
Yeah,
That's really good.
good.
We had a client at our company about 5 years ago, and he has since passed away. But he was a engineer at Ford, and he had developed some early onset Parkinson's, just had some issues with walking and some of his fine motor skills. And so we introduced a caregiver to him, and the gentleman's wife had passed away. And so he had not been in her bedroom. They had separate bedrooms, kind of old school. And he had not been in her bedroom since she passed. And so the caregiver finally encouraged him to go into the bedroom and go into the closet, and together they started going through things. And they found all these old pictures of the adventures that him and his wife would go on. And he realized in that moment, there was a picture of him and his wife on a ski slope with some pine trees looking over a mountain ridge. And he remembered, like it was yesterday, that this picture was when he and a bunch of his friends, they all went skiing together. And in that moment, he said, I haven't kept in touch with any of these people since my wife died. And so the caregiver said, well, why don't we make a greeting card out of this picture, and then you can send it out for Christmas to all your old friends and reconnect. And so he reluctantly agreed to do that. And so the caregiver took him down to Eastern Market. It was early fall, and they found some scented oils that smelled like pine trees. And they literally had the cards made, and they scented the cards to smell like the trees. And he wrote in there as best as he could with his handwriting. They discovered that the scented oils only lasted a certain number of days in the normal envelopes. They had to buy special envelopes. And all of a sudden, his engineer mind came back to life. And he started thinking about, oh, this is so cool that I could do this. And they mailed out all the cards. And sure enough, all these people called him after Christmas, and they started to rekindle those relationships. And so he sat down one day in January of the next year and said to his caregiver, that was so much fun. I really enjoyed doing this. Here's a guy now who's 78 years old, and he's nearing what could be the end of his life. And so the caregiver says something to him, and she says, what is something that you wish you would have done that you hadn't done? And he said, I always wanted to run my own business. Now, of course, that who says that at 78, right? I mean, you're with Parkinson's, you can't get out of the house. He says, I wish I could have run my own business. Well, the caregiver that was taking care of him used to run her own business. and she saw how much fun this gentleman had making this greeting card out of old pictures. And so she thought, wouldn't it be cool if we could develop greeting cards of old pictures of things that him and his wife did and make them scented greeting cards and just see what happened. At the very least, it's going to help him with his fine motor skills. It'll give him something to do when they got together. So they went out and they found 4 more pictures of him and his wife. And one of them was an old black and white picture of him giving a box of chocolates to his wife for Valentine's Day. And that was the very first card that they put into mass production. They made 200 cards. And they went down and found the essential oil that smelled like chocolate, and they put it in the right envelopes. And they found 2 local stores in the Birmingham area that agreed to carry these cards and sell them for Valentine's Day. And this gentleman passed away 4 months later. But his greatest success, I just love this. His greatest success, he said, was running a business at the age of 78. He only sold like 150 cards, but it was his dream. It was his passion. It's something he wanted to do. And sometimes you just need to have somebody else come alongside you to encourage you, to pull the vision out of you and then to push you towards it. And I just love sharing that story because it shows you what John Maxwell talks about in his book is you can't let your age determine if your dreams are dead or not. You can keep on fulfilling dreams and keep on moving forward and keep making a difference no matter what age you're at. So for him, the should have ended up being something that he was able to do. And even though he wasn't able to run this huge, gigantic business, he had a small business that he ran in the last few months of his life, and it made him feel complete at that point. So that's just such an awesome story that you cannot let your age prevent you from doing something if you have a dream or a passion.
May I have the caregiver's name, please?
That's awesome. Good stuff.
Well, listen, at church, our pastor's been talking lately about cutting off the past, because there's nothing for us back there. And then I've heard this expression said that you're somewhere in the future and you look a lot better than you do right now. Right? And imagine that, picture that. I'm somewhere in the future and I look a lot better than I do right now. My status is a lot different than it is right now. My conditions, my situations, my financial status is all different in the future. Why? Because I'm taking steps today to make a difference. Something Bert also said last week about the 2 different teams that were climbing the mountain, I believe you said, Bert, and in one, well, why don't you just highlight that story real quick?
Yeah, it was the story of the race to the South Pole. And so they were in Antarctica, and one team, they went all out and did as much as they could every single day. And that team wore out, the animals died, people got sick. They just kept pushing. And the other team said they were going to do the 20-mile march. And they just agreed it's 20 miles every day. Awesome weather. We get done in 6 hours, we're done, 20 miles. If the weather's bad, we keep pushing on to go 20 miles. But the team that just did 20 miles a day and did it consistently got there 3 days ahead of the other team, even though the other team, so some days would go 40 miles, but they couldn't recover fast enough because they were driving too hard. So that consistent march across the continent is what allowed them to get to the South Pole first.
Right, when the other team just ran themselves ragged.
Right.
But it's important. It's the 20 miles a day. It's the, as we talked last week about Dave Travis, it's putting on those shoes to walk those 10,000 steps, right? You've got to do that first things first. It's so important that we do that and not sit back and years later say, man, I should have, or I wish I would have. There's that time may have come and gone at that point, but now, today is the time and the opportunity for us to get started in that right direction. Bert, you have this next segment here. I think you'd like to share.
Yeah, the story of Bob Taylor in the book I thought was fantastic. It took up the majority of the chapter. Does anybody know who Bob Taylor is? Did you guys get it? If you didn't get
Guitar guy.
Yeah, Bob Taylor is the designer of Taylor guitars, and he basically just tells his entire story in this chapter about how when Taylor was in high school, he didn't really know what he wanted to do, but he found himself to be really handy in shop class, and he won 2 statewide championships in California making metal projects. And then his his junior year of high school, he decided he was going to make a 12-string guitar, which I don't know this, but if you do any research, 12-string guitars are incredibly complex to make. And even his shop teacher said, there's no way you're going to do this. But his junior year, he made his very first guitar. And that just began to fuel this passion for creating guitars. And so he told his parents he wasn't going to go to college. And of course, they freaked out. And he left high school and found this co-op shop with a bunch of hippies, and he was the one who was not a hippie, and he was not the one that was smoking pot and doing all this stuff. He just focused on making his guitars, and sure enough, eventually the co-op is about to go out of business, but he's still there, fine-tuning his craft, and him and two other people that were working at the shop buy the shop, and they turn it into a business. And so he continues to make his guitars. They decide to name the guitar after the person who's making them, which is why they're now called Taylor Guitars. And for the first 8 to 10 years of the business, they were barely making any money. And he describes that his passion burned so much for it that he didn't care if they were making money. He just cared that they had enough money to allow him to make guitars. And so literally he loved it. He would go to work, he would make guitars, he would go home and sleep, eat, and come back and start all over again the next day. Obviously, he did balance it with family. At the time the book was written, he had been married for 30 years, so he recognized the importance of family, but he recognized the importance of following his passion and his dream. Now, all these years later, Taylor now makes, I think it was 72,000 instruments a year that are sold worldwide. And it is the most well-known, well-respected entry-level guitar for people looking to learn, as well as some high-end pieces. But he just basically said in the story that his passion was so incredible that it burned so strongly that other people around him would catch on fire from the burning passion. And even John Maxwell says that he doesn't really give a lick about guitars, but every time he talks to Bob Taylor, he gets excited about guitars because you can just feel the passion coming from Bob. So that led into a question about the passion gauge, which is on page 27 of your book. And basically, John Maxwell challenges all of us to really look at the dream that we're chasing after and the passion we have with it, and to say, hey, does your passion line up with your dream? Where are you on that scale? So if you were to look at that scale, numbers 1 through 10, and what I'm going to do is, I don't know if everybody, I think everybody has the book, but I just want to share my screen so you guys can see this. But this is the actual guide, okay? So of those numbers there, 1 through 10, everybody take a second and tell us, where is your passion at for your dream that you have right now? Okay, who wants to start? Well, if everybody go through this, just tell us the number where you're at with your current dream.
Denise, 7.
Fired up by it and often preoccupied with it. That's great, Denise. Excellent. Who else?
8.
Keith is an 8. Okay. Jessica typed in, says she's a 6.
I'm a 6.
David's a 6. Okay. Who else? And if you don't know, maybe it's because you still don't know what that dream is yet, and that's okay. You can tell us that too. Carrie says she's a 6 as well, but she wants to be a 10. Okay.
Yeah, I'm at a 6.
Carrie's at a 6. Okay. Christine says she's at a 7. I think that's everybody.
No, I didn't say yet.
Oh, you didn't say it. I'm sorry, Dave.
I would say probably between a 6 and a 7.
Between a 6 and a 7. Okay. Okay. So obviously, one of my dreams, and we talked about this a couple weeks ago, was to, maybe open a restaurant someday, right? So if I were to really look at that dream of me owning a restaurant, based on what I'm currently working on, I would say that I'm probably at a 7. I'm at a 7 with it. but I'm not at a 10, 9, or 8 right now because right now I have other things I need to be focused on, like my primary business and ministry and those things too. But definitely I'm at a 7 with the restaurant. Tom, how about you? Where are you at right now?
I'm at an 8.
An 8? Okay. Okay, and John Maxwell basically says in his book that a healthy place to be at is between an 8, a 9, or a 10. The passion gauge needs to be at an 8, 9, or 10 if you really want to see your dream come to fruition. So why do you think that is? Why do you think he starts it at an 8? If you're below an 8, why would that be detrimental to your dream?
Just because number 8 is you're willing to sacrifice for it. I think that's, and 8 and beyond is the sacrificial side.
I think that you start taking action at 8. 7, you can still just think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good.
Ooh, good.
That's right. What's the old saying that people only value things when it costs them something? Right?
Yeah.
Right? If it doesn't cost you anything, then it probably isn't worth anything. And you're right, Denise. Number 8 is where it starts to cost you something. That's good. Any other feedback on? Yes,
One thing I just said, can't we have multiple dreams as well? And different
sure.
things that we're willing to sacrifice for, things that we're, and we can have lesser dreams, but that are even hopes, I guess. But there are other things that we totally, like I think your business is one that, and that continuing to thrive or to grow is even higher than, than what you said, than the dream of the business, than the restaurant.
Sure. But but to flip that too, Dave, like I do know that I'm passionate about my primary business, but I also know that my primary business is a means to allow me to financially achieve other dreams.
Okay.
Right? So I'm not willing to sacrifice the dreams of what I want to accomplish or do, whether it be in ministry or other things, just for that business. Because if it's just about that business, to me, that business it's still a job, right? That's where I make my money from. So I'm passionate about it and I'm willing to sacrifice for it, especially right now when I have to pay close attention to it. But once this pandemic rolls back again and I'm able to start stepping away from it, there's other things I plan on investing my time into. So I still think there has to be one dream though that still dominates or rises to the top of the other ones. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Because not every dream can be a 10.
Right.
So you have to sacrifice something for one of those dreams to take off. Good stuff. Tom, you want to take us through the last section?
Yes. So our next section is stoking the fire of that passion. And number 1, we need to take into account your natural temperament. Okay? Take into account your natural temperament. Okay? So some people are highly motivated or highly passionate or hyper. And they're just gung-ho, both feet, let's do this thing, in March. Where others are just take it really slow. It's very organized. It's very paced, right? And that's okay. But we need to take into account our natural temperament. Number 2, keep your eye on what's important. Keep your eye on what's important. Just came to mind about Purpose-Driven Church, I think it was, by Rick Warren. And he talked about keeping your mission statement or your goals for your ministry, in that case of that book, first and forefront. Because other opportunities will come our way, right? I remember this, my dog, Angel, and whenever there was a squirrel outside, I could just say, squirrel. And she's like, where, right? And then if she sees 2 of them, she goes completely ballistic. And you let her out the door and she tries to run and grab both of them. Well, she can't grab both of them because she's focused on 2 things at once, right? And so you need to keep your eye on what's important and Keep your focus on what you're doing. Number 3, overcome fear of being different from others. Okay, in our society, we're trained to be like everybody else. We're trained to do things like everybody else. But how many know that we're not like everybody else, right? So overcome the fear of being different from others. It's okay to be different. Number 4, resist the apathy that often accompanies aging. Resist the apathy. Remember, John Maxwell's dad is 98, and he says his best days are ahead of him. All right, and then this is a final question on that. Which of the previous insights that I just gave you identifies what you need to overcome to have your dream compel you to go for it?
Can you explain more what take into action your natural temperament means?
Take into account your natural temperament, how you're wired.
Yeah, Keith, there is another example of this too would be, for example, and we talked about this a little bit last week, my general manager at work, who I have hired to run Homestead, she has a different temperament than me, right? I have a more natural ability to be empathetic to people, to really understand where they're coming from, wanting to know the root of it, where she's very matter of fact. I want to get this done. And really, that's what I determined my company needed at this point. When you get to a point where you have over 200 employees, you can't be empathetic with every single one of them and all their needs. You have to get the business moving. So my temperament would be better in a situation, I know, and this is part of what we do as a company, from Real Leadership Company. We do a DISC assessment, right? You can do a DISC assessment to know what your strengths are, your weaknesses, where you need to cover those down. So I know that my temperament is really good at starting things. I'm really, really good at starting things. I'm really, really bad at finishing things, right? But that's okay. I know that that's a strength of mine. If you want to get something started, a project started, I have the temperament to push through to make it happen no matter what. I'm not going to give up. But once it's started, I want to hand it off to somebody else to let them run with it and finish it and grow it and develop it. And I know that's a strength and a weakness of mine. So that's part of my natural temperament. So it wouldn't be good for me to take on a job or a role where someone else starts something and now they just want me to run the day-to-day of it. That would drive me absolutely crazy. So just knowing what your strengths and weaknesses are and how you react in certain situations, I think that really does speak to the temperament of who you are as a person and know where you naturally flow. And again, if anybody ever wants to have a DISC assessment done with a coaching session afterwards, there's a lot of John Maxwell tools that Tom and I are able to use to help you out with that. But that's part of what we do with our coaching business. Good question.
So let me ask this question to everyone. Is there anything keeping you from going for your dream?
Finances, number one.
Okay. That's important.
Yeah.
Finance.
Gary, do you know what type of finances you need to get going?
Well, the biggest thing is buying a building.
Okay.
So that's the most expensive to get things going.
Okay. And Gary, refresh our memories for a minute. What was the dream again? What are you looking to achieve?
Well, I came up with something last night that God had put on my heart, is to buy a building, and with this pandemic and not being able to return bottles and cans and things like that, if they donate them, I'd separate them and open up a business that would take people off the street, the homeless people, and put them in there to work and give them a second chance.
Dave, looks like you want to say something. Go for
I
it.
just wanted to encourage Gary, if that's really what he wants, he does. He doesn't necessarily need to buy a building. You can lease a building, you can rent a building, lots of things you can do to make it more of a, to get the business going off the road. Maybe down the road, it might be good to invest in the fixed assets, but in the short term, you can go into with a lot less capital.
And Gary, there's a lot of churches right now, like all of them, that are absolutely sitting empty, doing nothing. And this could be a ministry that you could go approach a church with. And if you're willing, let's face it, right? I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but one of the biggest issues with churches and new ministries is everybody wants to create new ministries, but nobody wants to do the work of the ministries, right?
That's right. It's about 10% doing 90% of the work.
That's absolutely right. So Gary, if there's a ministry that you want to do and you're willing to go to a church and partner with them to make that happen, they have the building. They often have some of the resources you may need. So you may not need to go buy a building. Why not partner with someone who has a building?
But again, get back. Guys need to check out that podcast or that conversation we had with Nate that we talked about at the beginning of this mastermind today. And the link is in the chat there if you scroll up. But it's fantastic. Bert just shared about Nate, and he went in there with his $50,000 plan, and they said, well, how can you do it for $25,000? Well, that's completely half, right? And then it came in with 25,000, and they just shut that down and cut that in half. So listen, we can't allow anything to stop us from pursuing our dream. So that being said, what other ways can we do it? Again, Nate went in with a $50,000 plan, and they said, well, you only have 25,000. So instead of saying, well, I can't do it because they won't accept my offer for 25,000, for 50,000. So instead, he just rewrote the plan, right? Came up with another way. And some great, thank you. Some great suggestions were just made by Dave and Bert for Gary. And we can apply those all to our own lives as well. That we can just restructure the plan, look at it from a different perspective. Oh, okay, I can't do it this way, but what if I do it this way? Okay? But don't allow these things to keep us at a complete standstill. And another thing, we just mentioned at the top of this mastermind also that 11% of restaurants will be closed forever. So there are some vacant buildings sitting open. So there's some, the possibility is great. And I think, Keith, you mentioned Simon Sinek. And he talks about that very thing, rising out. And he said that there's going to be new businesses that are going to be developed, and new entrepreneurs are going to be coming out of the woodwork out of this current pandemic that we're facing. So, and we need to have that infinite mindset, right? That we're not going to get stuck right here or stuck the way things were, how things, this is the way we always done it, so that we're not going to change anything, right? What's that quote that says, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah.
But we might find ourselves being left behind because we didn't take the initiative to continue this dream and this passion and staying focused on what our dreams have compelled us to do in the first place.
I love the way you're thinking though, Gary, because this is a problem that we're all having right now, right? I mean, none of us can return any cans or bottles to the grocery store. This past week, I literally threw out probably 30 cans because I'm running out of room in my garage. We just cleaned out our garage. I just put them in the recyclable bin and I sent them off to the recycling shop. But this is the way the mindset has to change during these types of things. I can tell you right now, I know of several business owners who had large operations, 6,000 to 10,000 square foot offices. And now they're all having to work from home. And I just spoke to a business owner yesterday, and you know what he said to me? We're never going back to a 10,000 square foot office. He said, we can run our business out of a 3,000 square foot office, and I can have people working from home. They're going to save on gas. They're going to mitigate risk. People aren't driving to work. There can be potential for fewer car accidents. I'm telling you right now, you're going to see a huge surgence of vacant office space after this, because people are adapting and adjusting to it. And that's going to be huge for businesses like Keith's, where they want to work from home. They're going to need VoIP, phone services. I'm telling you this. I'm just sharing this because I love the way you're thinking, Gary, that there's a huge problem right now. There are people that have cans and bottles that can't get rid of them. Some of them will hold on to them, but some of them, you know what, they're not going to want to. Think about this. The mad rush to go to Meijer and Kroger to turn in bottles and cans after this. I'm not standing in line for 3 hours to get $4 back from my cans. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So there's going to be a backlog of bottles and cans for probably 3 months of people trying to turn those in. Now's the time to seize that opportunity, Gary, to partner with a church that's willing to do this and have all of that money go towards that dream. Now, the other challenge to this is to really think about the pathway. And this leads into chapter 5 of next week, because I know we're getting close to the end of the session today. Chapter 5 next week talks about, do I have a strategy to reach my dream? So Gary's dream is I want to help the homeless. I want to help people that are down on their luck. What is it going to take financially, Gary, to really make that happen? And can you truly fund that vision with the return of 10-cent bottles and cans? Right? Because now you have to start thinking to yourself, okay, what's this going to cost me per month to do this? What is the church going to be willing to let me do to partner with them? And how many bottles and cans do I need to collect on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis to actually fund that dream? And so next week, we're going to start talking about, do I have a strategy to reach my dream? And how do you actually secure the dream? So that's where we start putting the nuts and bolts into place now of what that dream is going to look like and the work that needs to go into it, that sweat equity that Carrie talked about, that we're going to have to put into it to really make it happen. Tom, I want to just show a couple things on our website real quick. Are you okay with that, or do you want to wrap up with something? Good. Okay. So I just want to show you guys the website, and I know you've been here before, but I just want to walk you through what we're doing. If you're ever looking for our blog or the podcast that we do, it's realleadershipcompany.com. At the top, you just click on the word blog, and that will take you to our Life, Love, and Leadership blog. And you can see the last one we did was on April the 7th. It's Dreaming Big Dreams in Uncertain Times. That was a conversation with Nate Rockwell. You can click on that and you can listen to it. But also on our main website, I just want to show you what we do. Right now, we have this virtual mastermind that we're doing. It runs through May 23rd. The reason it goes through May 23rd is because that's how many chapters there are in the book. So that's how long we'll be doing this one for. There's another one that Tom's going to be doing starting on Thursday nights, April the 16th. So this coming Thursday, it just runs for 3 Thursdays. Again, this one is also free. It's Leading Through Crisis, John Maxwell Mastermind Group. So we encourage, if you know business owners or you know politicians or ministry leaders that are really challenged with this adversity they're facing, this is a time to get that group think together, people to come together to talk about it. That's on Thursday nights from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Tom, anything else you want to add about that mastermind? You're on mute, Tom.
Yes, just whether or not you're interested in joining on this particular mastermind, do us all a favor and share it. Let other people know about it. We greatly appreciate that. You know, sharing this or the Put Your Dream to the Test or our website or any of the things that we offer through Real Leadership Company. We greatly appreciate anything you could do to help us in that way.
Yep. This is the Unstuck University. These links are not active yet, but we're actively building out our database like we talked about last week. Eventually, there'll be a monthly subscription, really small amount to access all these classes and all that stuff on there. Again, as coaches, we offer independent coaching, teaching, speaking opportunities because we are certified John Maxwell coaches. The iCoach Me system, we're still not ready to launch it yet, but this is really exciting. This is a great HR tool for small businesses. How many times have you in life had a conversation with somebody? You're doing coaching with them. You're saying, look, you need to change this mindset. You need to adjust what you're doing. Here's what needs to happen. And then you're done with the conversation. And then literally a month later, you say, remember we talked about this last month? And they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Happens all the time in business. So we're developing a coaching app that you can use to do coaching and mentoring and training with your employees. And this is great for small business owners, especially those that work out of an office. If you're a landscaper or you're on a construction site or whatever the case is, this allows you to do coaching with your employees, your team members, and we'll be unveiling that later on. And also, Tom and I, we do a lot of job candidate interviews and behavioral analysis, where we literally, let's say you have a company that's going to make a huge investment in making a hire. You're going to hire a new HR manager, a new sales rep, and you say, man, I have these 3 candidates. We like them all, but I want an outside opinion on which one's going to work best. We can come in, we'll do a disc assessment, we'll do top grading interviews, and then we're going to present to you the red flags that we find. We're not going to say this is the right candidate, but we're going to say, here's what we found in these candidates, and that can help out significantly. And then of course, also on Facebook, this is where you will actually find the events for Real Leadership Company. And coming up with these events, sorry, as I get there, you can see the events coming up. Again, this is the one we're doing right now, the Put Your Dream to the Test Virtual Mastermind Group. We encourage you to share that. And then Leading Through Crisis. This is the one that's coming up on April the 16th. All you need to do is click on the share button, and you can share this with people to see if they might be interested in coming to that. So we encourage you guys to be part of that. Anyways, thank you guys for joining us today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next week is going to be another good Saturday. Again, we have a few more of these to go, but next week we're going to start talking about the nuts and bolts of how we make our dreams happen. What is the pathway to making that happen? And we hope you guys will join us next week. Anything else to share from you guys?
Carrie asked how she could take the disc assessment.
Yeah, if you want to take the disc assessment, you can send that to us. There is a cost for that. I believe I need to double check the price, and I apologize, I don't know it off the top of my head, but we can do the disc assessment with you, and that also includes a one-on-one session where we will sit down with you probably right now through Zoom, go over the entire disc profile with you, tell you what your strengths and weaknesses are, and then give you some advice on ways you can overcome some of those weaknesses and focus in on your strengths. So if you're interested in that, you can hit us up with a message and email, and we'll get that back to you guys.
And Denise, you can get the participant guide. It's in this chat box here towards the top. So just scroll up to the top there and you can download it. It's already been added.
Or the bottom, depending on what you're watching on.
Yeah, and Denise, if for some odd reason, if you're not able to get that, just shoot me an email or a private message on Facebook, and I can get that emailed to you as well for next week, so you'll have it. Awesome. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining us.
Oops.
Huh? Okay. Well, thanks so much, you guys, for joining us. And we will see you guys next Saturday for the next chapter in this Mastermind series with Real Leadership Company. You guys all have a great week.
Thanks, guys.